Hey guys, Youngblood with you, and today I wanted to give you some first impressions on the Reliant now that she's flight ready. And like mini ships, when we get our first taste of them, I'm assuming that the performance isn't up to where we should expect it to be when it ends up being finalized. But right now, she doesn't really fly all that well. The ship suffers from a lot of drift, as well as some weird kind of jerking motions when it comes to the yaw most specifically. And it takes a while to respond, and by the time your ship starts to do what you want with it, then it tends to oversteer a bit. And that ends up making landing your shots on your target a real challenge, because when you're fighting with the core, it almost is like you're swinging past your target when you're trying to land your shots. I think what we're seeing here is in line with what we saw initially with ships like the Cutlass and the GN Scout, and that's the complicated maneuvering thrusters and articulated main thruster flight model. Now my guess at this point is that the flight mechanics just aren't ironed out yet, and we should see some improvements. As far as combat is concerned, the default loadout of the two M3A lasers is pretty anemic, and it ends up being, I don't know, not really able to pack much of a punch. Now, ships like an M50 get away with a loadout like that based on speed and agility, but when you consider the core has a top speed of 210 in SCM and a 320 at boost, it doesn't have the same level of forgiveness that a ship like the M50 may have. The core does have a trick up its sleeve though, because it's able to equip size 3 weapons on the wingtips, and when you combine that with the underwing weapons, all of a sudden you're able to currently equip like 2 Panthers and 2 Bulldogs, or whatever your preferred size 3 and size 1 loadout combination is, which actually gives it some pretty impressive firepower for a pseudo starter ship. Now the initial plan with this ship was that you were going to have turrets on the wings, so we'll see if you end up getting the option to keep a fixed size 3 weapon on each side, but it does seem promising at the moment. Defensively, the ship has some really weak shields, and you're going to notice it because it takes a long time for your ship to actually change directions, so you tend to kind of sit in place and drift a little bit while you're trying to maneuver to chase your target. The shields actually melt off pretty quick, even in Vanduul Swarm. Now, you're almost going to be better off trying a boom and zoom tactic as far as your targeting and engagement, but with mini ships being faster than you are in the core, they can catch you with relative ease. The core also has a relatively low number of countermeasures, meaning that you're a real threat to eating missiles, which is going to be especially problematic in today's build where missile effectiveness is pretty high. The ship is unique though, and it has a really nice view from the cockpit, even though the HUD is kind of hit or miss on whether it's going to display for you or not. So despite some of the problems mentioned before, it's still a fun little ship, like having the ability to change between the vertical and horizontal flight model. Now, I think there's one really important caveat to talk about this in this initial review, and that's the intended role of this ship. The core is a mini hauler, it's not a fighter, so expecting it to be competing with dedicated fighters is an unrealistic goal, and complaints about the ship are probably somewhat intended. Now, when you consider what it brings for a starter ship designed to haul goods, it's probably pretty okay in its current role. However, with no cargo in the game at this point, it's really hard to kind of evaluate its effectiveness in that intended role. So I'm expecting to see a lot of changes to the flight model over the next few patches, and once things do change, I'll absolutely be doing follow-up videos on the ship. So if you have questions on any of this, please let me know. Otherwise, stay tuned for more content. I appreciate you guys watching. Have a wonderful day, and take care.